All right, so thank you for attending our presentation. I'm Rochelle Evans, and I'll be presenting on our insights from GTA commuting trends, along with my colleagues Yuri Kim, Anna Godele, and Lauren Holt. So our data on commuters indicate that transportation costs affect car use, but do not affect public transit use. So therefore, we recommend increasing taxes on gasoline prices and maintaining or even slightly increasing transit prices. So diving right into it, we received data from the Ministry of Transportation based on a commuting survey that they conduct every 5 years. We generated heat maps to show the numbers of people from 3 regions outside of Toronto, Peel, Durham, and York, who commute to Toronto for work and school. And from 1996 to 2016, these numbers have increased 30 to 50%, which is sizable.
So how are people getting to Toronto? If we look at the average daily trips that are happening, we see that the pattern looks like this by mode of transportation. So as you can see, for car usage, it's decreasing since 1996, and in parallel, transit use is increasing. And also, interestingly, we see a nice little growth spurt for cycling and walking since 2011. So if we focus a bit closer on the transit pattern, you'll see that this growth is sizable. So if we zoom in a bit more, we see that the growth goes from 20% and is starting to jump to 30%. So now diving even deeper into the types of transits that people are using, we can see that for TTC, which are the 2 top lines, the pattern is pretty much staying stable, but the growth seems to be happening in the GO transit. So if we zoom in a little bit closer on these 2 lines, we can see that it's really the GO rail that's increasing in terms of the transit use.
So next, we wanted to dig a little deeper to try to understand why we're observing these commuting patterns. And so we merged external data sources with the data that we were provided from the Ministry of Transportation. Specifically, we were interested in transportation costs for the region of Toronto, including gasoline prices and transit fares. So we're going to be presenting correlations here, but I'm mostly going to be talking in terms of trends simply because our sample size was not large, justify talking about statistical significance. But as you can see, as gas prices increase, there is a decrease in the use of cars as well as an increase in the use of transit. And this makes sense in terms of economic principles. As the cost of a specific behavior, in this case driving, increases, we see that the frequency of that behavior decreases, whereas the frequency of alternate forms, in this case transit, is increasing. Don't also observe the same pattern or the same economic principle with transit fares. Instead, what we find is that as the price of transit increases, transit use doesn't decrease, it actually continues to increase. Now, we did look at other alternate explanations for these findings. Specifically, we did look at population density in Toronto as well as rental prices outside of Toronto. But unfortunately, because our predictors were so highly correlated, we were not able to use them as controls. However, future research could continue to look into these alternate explanations. However, based on the trends that we observe between transit costs as well as the transit use, we make the following policy recommendations. Specifically, we know that the Ministry of Transportation is interested in decreasing reliance on cars as well as increasing public transit use. So we would recommend that the ministry increase gasoline prices, a gas tax, to decrease car usage. However, we also recommend that they maintain or even slightly increase transit prices. And this is based on the data that we found that as transit prices increase, transit continues to rise. And increasing the price of transit should help offset any costs with a gas tax, as it should help raise revenue to further improve the public transit system.
Okay, so increasing prices on transit seems like a pretty strange recommendation, but a report from the Bank of Canada highlighted a major trend, which was that consumers' concern for the environment has increased over the last decade. So public transportation is often seen as an environmental initiative because it lowers greenhouse gas emissions and that contributes to climate change. So people are willing to pay more for ethical products. So we suggest that the Ministry of Transportation focuses on creating an advertising initiative to highlight the positive environmental impact of public transportation, which might help consumers be more open to maintaining transit costs as they are, or even potentially slightly increasing them. And thank you so much for watching our presentation. We'll take questions.
Well,